So welcome back to the Raising Our Vibration podcast, where we explore higher consciousness through spiritual practice. And today, Stephen and I are going to talk about, in troubling times, what can you trust? What can you trust? It seems like things are crumbling in all different ways around us these days. Traditional sources of trust, things that seem to not be working anymore, and systems breaking down, and then pandemic and climate change and all kinds of natural disasters and so on and change in our own lives, just in a very personal way, things that just aren't working anymore that we need to change and grow and so on. So in times like this that feel like they're very tumultuous or even chaotic, that question of what can I trust is really a vital question. And so we're going to talk about this today in two senses, in a relative sense and in an absolute sense. So what do I mean by that? So as I was talking to Stephen a little earlier about, well, what do I trust in a relative sense? I from years and years, since I was 12 years old, I've exercised every day. And I do it every day because it makes me feel good, and it's pretty reliable. And so it's something that I trust that if I exercise, I'm going to feel good, I'm going to be healthier, and so on. But I'm not exercising all the time. Okay, it's not like a panacea for everything in my life, but it's a relative form of that I can rely on to make me feel better, make me feel more energized and relaxed, and so on. In the same way with meditation practice, that's something that is relatively trustworthy because I've done it for 38 years, and when I sit down every morning, no matter how I feel when I sit down, when I am done with the whole practice, I reliably feel better. So it's a reliable form of trust, but it is a technique. It is something that can be variable. I never know exactly what the experience will be, right? It's subject to conditions in my environment and conditions in my mind and so on. And even though now, after so many years, I can reliably access something beyond the relative, the practice itself is subject to relative conditions. So we'll talk more about the absolute sense of trust as we go on. But this relative sense of trust is, well, what's trustworthy for you? What do you find is trustworthy in your life? And so this came up with my son, Will, who he was born prematurely, and he actually at 24 weeks, and he had all kinds of surgery in NICU. He was in the NICU for 4 months, and he had LASIK eye surgery, among all heart surgery, abdominal surgery, on and on and on. But he had this LASIK surgery around his eyes to save his vision so that he can see, because when you're on a respirator for so long, capillaries build up and your retina can detach. So long story short, he had this surgery when he was in the NICU, and now he's 21 years old, and he was experiencing this buildup of pressure in his eyes, and that can be really dangerous because it can lead to glaucoma and loss of vision. So we went into the eye doctor, or to the retina specialist, and they recommended a procedure where they punch a hole with a laser through the iris to allow fluid to balance in the eye and to maintain proper eye pressure. So that sounds like something really scary. Okay, when I heard that, I was like, really? And Will, my son, was like, oh, I don't know. I don't know about that. He definitely, level of trust on that was a 0. So we talked more with the doctor, who's very good, and answered all his questions. And so on. When it came down to it, what he was worried most about was himself. Is how would I react? How will I react when I'm having and she described how they're going to put a lens in, it's going to hold your eyelids open, and it's going to keep your eyeball in place. And then I'm going to put this laser through, and it'll just be a little pinch. It'll sting, and hopefully that we'll just need to do that once, and it will work. But what he came away from, even after that appointment, was, well, I don't know if I trust myself not to react. What if I just tense up and jerk, and the laser hits something that it's not supposed to, and I don't trust myself in that situation. So I talked to him about, well, what's trustworthy for you, and what's creating that lack of trust. So as we got into it and talked about it, we talked about other examples where he felt a lot of tension and fear. He came around to, in his own words and in his own mind, that, well, it's my own mind. It's when my mind is going, I'm spinning out all these scenarios of what might happen. And as long as that's going, I don't trust. I don't trust myself. I don't trust the situation. I said, okay, so, and we've worked with this with him in college with how to deal with stress and pressure and so on. And he's come to, and we went through, well, deep breathing. Does deep breathing work for you? And he tried deep breathing. He's like, no, I get more tense. It's like, well, he was in the NICU and he was on a respirator for 4 months, and he has this, breathing is scary for him. So like that is a cue, deep breathing, which works for a lot of us. That doesn't work well for Will, because he has this built-in anxiety about being able to breathe. So when he's trying to breathe, or even when he's paying attention to his breathing, that's not a good cue for him. But we came around to, what helps him is just to be aware of present moment sensations. He's like, when I'm just aware of present moment sensations, my mind stops. I'm not thinking anymore. And it's just like everything lets go. And I just relax. And so he said social anxiety is learned to do that in social situations, and just to feel into the sensations. Even if it's a sensation of anxiety, he feels into it as a sensation, not with all the thinking and emotion around it, but just purely as a sensation. And that drops him out of conceptual mind, out of thinking, out of worrying, out of spinning scenarios, and into this just being present, this felt sense of presence, present moment sensations, and that quiets his mind. And so, so that's a cue that really works for him. Okay, it's something that he does. It's and it gives him a relative sense of calm and relaxation and so on. And he's practiced it now. He's cultivated it. So now it's becoming reliable for him. At first, he was like, well, it works a little bit. I'm like, a little bit is good. That's good. Just, you can build on that little bit. So just keep with it. And he's like, yeah, I'm starting to get a feel for how being aware of present moment sensations just quiets my mind and relaxes my body, and I settle into a sense of relative trust in this moment. So, Stephen, I know you have some uh, another example that you'd like to share along those same lines, and then we'll work our way towards what absolute trust might be.
Yeah, Kevin, thank you, and love and blessings to everybody on this beautiful day, wherever you are in the world. So, yeah, what Kevin was sharing about Will is a really poignant example of this moving from relative trust into absolute trust, and I'm sure it's something everybody can relate to. This week, I've had a lot of people come to ask advice around friendships and this relative and absolute. So I'll give you some really simple examples. Quite often, our relationships are good tests, right, for our relative versus absolute trust in the world. The absolute trust says we can love and be compassionate towards everyone, right? And then we get these very sticky times that occur in our friendships where somebody we've been friends with for a while has a different point of view, and it conflicts with our current point of view about anything. It could be about the pandemic or the world situation or Ukraine and Russia or whatever it happens to be. And we find that relativity, that judgment, those opinions, really pull us out of our center and make it challenging. And this can happen with our own children too. We might have members of our family even who within our own family are just simply don't have the same point of view. Now, to sit in that awareness, Kevin, that you're talking about and simply be non-judgmental and be curious and open is a challenging thing to do at the best of times. So we often question, okay, what is this really? What is this love and compassion? What does this divinity mean? What is this ability to actually hold space for no matter what is present? Is that real? Does that actually even work? Do I actually, how do I do all this? Because in the stickiest, most challenging moments, I get suddenly pulled into this, just like Will, pulled into fear or anxiety or conflict or aversion to something, or we want to grab onto a life raft, or we just give up and say, okay, I'm not going to have anything to do with that person. So all of those challenges arise. And some really simple examples were some friends who were working with, for example, mantras or prayers from different religions. So religious views are a really good point to consider. Quite often in this beautiful day and age where we have access to we have access to a lot of practices, a lot of techniques, and we might get exposed or might have the opportunity to study with people from different traditions. Now, without knowing it right from childhood, or without really being aware of it, we have these really strong inbuilt, okay, I'm a Christian, or I'm a yogi, or I'm a Buddhist, or I love Muhammad, and I love the Islam faith, whatever it happens to be. And we have a certain feeling that not only does it feel good for us, which it is, and that's very valid, but that therefore it should be good for everybody. So there's a sense of a certain righteousness, and it's very subtle, but it can also come out quite strongly. And again, that's a very valid experience. That's something that happens for all of us as we go along the spiritual path. So if we take our own practices, so Kevin and I might think, oh, okay, we've done these raising our vibration practices. They're exactly right. And then, everybody should follow this. We could think that way. We don't, but we could think that way. So what happens with a lot of religious practices is then when we're exposed to something from a different tradition, it can be a little hard to relate. And in the sense of friendships, it's a bit like two friends, right? I'm in the sense that my Christian faith, for example, I was brought up a Christian in a Catholic family, that might have seemed to have been really sticky and almost irreconcilable with the Buddhist faith, where the Christian faith is a God and the Buddhist faith, there doesn't seem to be one. So that could have felt a very sticky kind of friendship to something that might have been even in conflict with each other. So when we might get guidance, so we might be doing a technique. So we've been practicing for years and years doing our prayers, and suddenly we've been asked to take a different type of a rosary bead. In this case, it's instead of rosary, it's a mala bead, and we're being asked to chant, mantras with this. Now, in a sense, the rosary beads and saying the Hail Marys are not that different from using mala beads to chant mantras like Om, 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 but it might feel different. So this is our judgment coming up. This is our relativity coming up, just like it would with a good friend. That some other examples would be that you've got two friends. One, I'm pro-vax, for example, and the other one's anti-vax, or vice versa. And both are opinions, both are judgments. That's currently what they are. And so they're a bit like, in that sense, they're a bit like a religious view. They can be a view or a judgment of another party. That's when they become a judgment. So how to deal with those kinds of relativities? Because again, they can feel that they bring conflict. So my suggestion to, for example, the people who are having difficulties with their friends, or the people that are having difficulties because the two friends are arguing about something like the pandemic, or somebody who comes from one religion and is trying to integrate the techniques of the other, is simply, first of all, just to rest back in the absolute, which is often what Kevin and I talk about. And this is what Kevin was guiding his son to be in, to rest back in what's just the felt sense that's there without any opinion or judgment. What happens when you rest back just as this vast, spacious awareness? What happens when you simply rest? Now, this is all to do with, just as Kevin described with Will, this is to do with developing a certainty around letting yourself expand into this wide, open, almost self-illuminating awareness. The awareness itself, when you rest back, when you sit as source, and Kevin's going to guide us into a trust exercise that helps you to understand moving from relativity into that absolute certainty that there's just one thing, there's just awareness. So when you rest back as that, and for example, you've spent years in the Christian traditions and you're trying to relate to a mantra that you've been given from a different religion. When you let yourself rest back as that awareness, aside from just simply resting in this vast, spacious and open expanse, or these vast, open awareness of the sensations, just as Will's been doing, there isn't anything else to do. There's nothing to meditate on. There's no judgment about whether it's this religion, that religion, whether it's this opinion about the pandemic or that opinion. It's nothing. It's not based on a memory. There's nothing to recollect. It's not based on thought. There's nothing to think about. And it's not based on your attention. You're not saying go out there and pay attention to a statue or an image or anything else. You're just saying, just rest back. Just as pure awareness itself. Just simply relax and rest and open to whatever is present. Just simply open to this timeless awareness that's always present. Now then, from that absolute awareness, from that very, very simple resting and opening, it's actually the quality of opening. It's the quality of being open and allowing and resting and relaxing. It's one of the keys that's often talked about in every path. Just relax. The moment you relax and you open to what's present, and just as Will did, you feel to whatever sensation is present. In other words, you're being open. That sense of openness has no judgment, has no past, has no future, has no idea. It has no concepts attached to it. It's just simply being open to what's present. It is that presence. And as you simply rest as that openness, then suddenly, so in the religious context, you recognize that what arises from that, so your intuitive sense of how to work with this, suddenly you can bring, for example, as I often did in the Christian centering prayer, I brought this sense of doing the practice as Mary, the mother of Jesus, and opening to the blessings of God from above. And so I could still do Om Japa, so I could still do Om, but now I'm doing Om practice as with that feeling of Mary opening up to God. It's that in that sense, there's no judgment. You're just simply being open to the blessings that come from doing this practice, free of judgment, free of any kind of definition or concept, free of right or wrong. Same with the friend. When you're really open to the beautiful qualities of the friendship itself. It doesn't matter what opinions you hold. It doesn't matter whether they're doing this, that, what your stance or judgment is on something. You can just simply be open to what's present. And then you actually can feel into the qualities of love and compassion for that friend. Same with any view. If you're sitting and watching television and you suddenly see something that really triggers you, instead of grasping onto that opinion and hanging on for dear life and telling your family how wrong it all is, what about if you were to just try resting back for a moment? Just suspend judgment. Just rest back as that openness, that vast open spacious awareness that can embrace everything, literally anything that arises, without judgment, free of opinion, free of ideas and concepts. Just see what you find out. So I know Kevin is going to guide us into a practice of learning to trust, because this is all about learning to trust this vast, spacious, stable, unobstructed and limitless awareness that's always present.
Thank you, Stephen. So let's do just a short practice now where we'll use the relative as a skillful means to contact and rest as the absolute, the open awareness. So if you will, just find a comfortable upright posture and have your feet firmly on the ground. Rest your hands, palms cupped in your lap. The tips of your thumbs touching lightly. Lightly close your eyes. And I want you to bring to mind any source of tension or any feeling that you have in life related to maybe feeling that things aren't trustworthy, or that there's conflict, or there's worry, just any uncomfortable experience in your life right now, whatever it is, anything you might be facing, thinking about coming up, like Will with this surgery, or anything that happened in the past week, anything that's kind of creating a sense of unease in your body, heart, and mind. So just choose one thing. And now feel into that. So as you focus on that one thing, as you call it to mind, how does that feel? What's the felt sense? Is there doubt or fear or anger or irritation, judgment? So whatever it is, see if you can just be open to allowing that to be present. Now, rather than focusing on your thoughts about that or even the emotions that arise, see if you can focus into the sensation of that in your body. So when you're recalling that experience or imagining that experience, what's the sensation in your body? So you may find there's a tension or an unease somewhere in your body. Could be in your head or in your back or in your gut. Could be anywhere at all. So what's the sensation of that experience? And see if you can simply welcome that sensation to be present without pushing it away, without immersing in it, just being present with it as a sensation, purely as a sensory experience. So, as a sensory experience, you may notice that the sensation intensifies like a wave, and then it may subside slightly. Just feel it as a sensation and notice the slight changes in that sensation. As you just simply are present with it as a sensory experience, notice its changing qualities. So every relative experience we have, though we may think of it as some clearly defined thing or state, as you tune into it as a sensation, you notice it's actually, it modulates, it changes. And that's the nature of all our experiences in this body, in this mind. They're changing. And as we think about them, we tend to solidify them and make them stronger and maybe obsess about them. But as we focus into their changing quality as a sensation, they start to become a little more fluid. So notice the fluid, changing quality of sensation. Every experience we have is in this mind and body is relative and changing. It arises, it intensifies, it fades, it dissolves. And now there's a part of you that is like a space within which all this is happening. So there's part of you that is attending to this and open to it, providing space for it. There's a deeper part of you that is simply this openness, this spaciousness within which all these changing experiences arise and dissolve. So now become aware of that within which, that space within which these sensations are arising. This vast openness, this spacious awareness within which any and all experiences arise and dissolve. So rest back and feel out to this vast, open space of awareness itself. And notice that this vast, open, clear space itself is unchanging. It's simply an openness within which we can attend to the relative and changing. To rest back and open out as this vast, open, clear space of awareness itself. Notice how it's unchanging. In fact, it has no qualities at all. It's simply open, clear, and vast, boundless, timeless. This unnameable, vast, open space of awareness is always constant, ever present. We simply don't recognize it because we're focused on the relative and changing. As we rest back and open out, we recognize this vast, unchanging, timeless essence of who we are. This, though it can't be named, you can have a felt sense of it, a recognition of it. We come to know this as absolutely trustworthy, ever present underneath all changing phenomena. This is the source of trust, absolute trust. And so now, very slowly, while still maintaining this felt sense of openness and vastness, begin to open your eyes. And recognize that everything here in this environment you're in now, in your body, in the space you're in, arises as an appearance within this vast, changeless, timeless awareness. And what would it be like to move through life as vast, open, clear awareness? Thank you all for your practice. Thank you, Stephen, for this discussion. Thank you all for watching and listening and practicing along. And if you'd like more information on practices like these, including our Raising Our Vibration community of practice and our ROV meditation app, you can visit raisingourvibration.net. And we'd love to have you join us there, and feel free to ask us any questions and enjoy your practice. Bye for now.